I mean, the issues are at once so complex and yet so simple. And just consider our current moment through the lens of a single variable: wealth inequality. There are good faith debates to be had about how much inequality is too much, but there really is no question that this is a problem that decent, compassionate people, or even merely self-interested people, are now wise to worry about. I mean, however rich and insulated you are, if you don't think that you've lost something when the level of homelessness and crime soars in your city, well, then you've lost your mind. Honestly, even a sociopath should be able to recognize that his own selfishness is best fulfilled in a context where others are doing at least reasonably well, where the sidewalks haven't come to resemble free fire zones or refugee camps. I've been worrying about wealth inequality for at least a decade. I wrote a few articles about it in the aftermath of the 2009 crash, and it's been a recurring topic on the podcast. And I worry about it from a place of not wanting to stigmatize wealth at all. I think that people who are railing against the mere existence of billionaires are just confused about economics. But everyone who is railing against increased social welfare in all its forms, anyone for whom terms like inequality and redistribution have become radioactive, is just confused about ethics. What kind of world do we want to live in? It seems to me there are pretty uncontroversial answers to this question. We want to live in a world where people are incentivized to do creative work that makes the world better and better. We want cures for terrifying diseases. We want to be able to distribute vaccines faster than we are at present. And we want a space program just for the fun of it, and also to ensure that human life continues indefinitely. If we discover there's a massive asteroid on a collision course with Earth, we want to be able to divert it and save our species, and every other species. We actually want to be that competent. Therefore, we want to massively fund science. And we need a rich civilization to do this. We want a future of real prosperity, and we are right to want that. And obviously, we need a model for global growth that's sustainable. But the end game for us isn't to cease innovating and improving our technology. We want our technology to become more and more effective and benign. So this already rules out some visions of the future. This can't be a hippie paradise where everything is made of hemp. Capitalism, for all its flaws, really seems to have this part right. We need to work with the grain of human nature and leverage people's selfishness and their desire for status in a way that brings out the best in us, not the worst. We need to incentivize people to build things that actually work. It's not enough to just play the didgeridoo on the sidewalk in Seattle or Portland. We need to get things done. And we want beautiful public spaces and brilliant works of art and great food and cars and smartphones. But we also want a world where the differences between good and bad luck don't cause us to avert our eyes in horror. We don't want a world where people leap to their deaths from the rooftops of the factories that are building our toys. We don't want an epidemic of homelessness in San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York. As we produce more and more wealth, we have to become more compassionate and more connected to one another, not more sociopathic. There are really two paths we can take here, and they are diverging steeply now. And the only thing that will determine which path we take will be the ideas that prevail in the culture. The ideas that win will affect each of us personally. There will be new norms to which we will effortlessly adhere, because to do otherwise will be embarrassing. Wearing a seatbelt is a norm that very few people need to rethink now. And yet it used to be a bizarre concession to fear. Now you're just an imbecile not to wear a seatbelt. We need new norms that anchor our deeper values. We need norms that make us better people. Let's be even more specific. It's been much noticed of late that there seems to be an exodus in the tech community out of California to states that don't have an income tax, in particular Texas and Florida. Now, there's some question about whether or not this trend has been overhyped, but I can personally account for tens of millions of dollars, and probably even hundreds of millions of dollars of California's tax base drying up, simply judging from the people I know personally who are leaving the state, and who are in some cases taking their companies and employees with them. In California, the top 1% of earners pay 50% of the taxes. So it doesn't take that many rich people to decide to move before the state's revenue goes into freefall. Now, this is a very complicated issue, ethically and politically, and even psychologically. Because, of course, it's rational for any individual to want to pay as little in taxes as he or she legally can. And if we have a system wherein simply moving to another state amounts to the equivalent of someone paying you millions of dollars a year to live there, it's very easy to see why that would seem like an opportunity that's just too good to pass up. So I don't feel especially judgmental about these people moving, especially when you consider how mismanaged our tax dollars often seem to be. It would be one thing if the return on our taxes was undeniably good, but unfortunately the results are so mixed, especially now, that it's very easy for people to become cynical. And many of these people have become cynical about the prospects of government ever functioning effectively. But there's an interesting needle to thread here. One can seek to pay as little in taxes as one legally can, while also believing that taxes are necessary and that the tax rate should be raised given the magnitude of the need, while also believing that tax revenue is often wasted and that government needs to be seriously reformed. I don't see a contradiction there. Personally, I try to pay as little in taxes as I can legally, but I think taxes should be raised on everyone in my bracket. And I think this despite my certainty that some of that money will be wasted or spent in ways that I would judge totally counterproductive. A challenge one often hears from libertarians is, you're free to pay more into the treasury yourself, so why not just do that and shut up about raising taxes on the rest of us? But that misses the point. It misses several points. No one should be eager to make a solitary sacrifice that serves no purpose. The point is that waste and mismanagement aside, our infrastructure and education and everything else in our society needs to be funded. And there is no one in a better position to fund these things than the wealthy. Government mismanagement isn't an argument for not paying taxes. And it isn't an argument for lower taxes. It's an argument for better government. Of course, charitable giving is part of the picture here. Here's a new norm that we really must spread. If you're wealthy enough to have hired professionals whose primary job is to ensure that you pay as little as possible in taxes each year, well, then you should also be giving a lot of your money away to the most urgent causes. Not after you're dead, but every year while you're alive, and while you can enjoy it. This goes to the question of what is wealth for? What is it good for? One thing it's good for is that it gives you the ability to help people very directly. And if you don't use that ability, given the excruciating need, people will begin to think that you're just selfish, as they should. Actually, all the strands of this web converge on San Francisco in a way that's instructive. Recently, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, gave $75 million to San Francisco General Hospital. And this is the largest gift to a public hospital ever, apparently. And yet the city's Board of Supervisors voted 10-1 to condemn the naming of the hospital after Zuckerberg and Chan. And they further vilified Zuckerberg in the process. So this moment contains the whole problem in miniature. Zuckerberg and Chan gave $75 million to a hospital. And obviously this is a wonderful thing to do. And the fact that this is the largest private gift to a public hospital ever tells you that it should be celebrated rather than sneered at, which is what the social justice lunatics on the Board of Supervisors have done. And they did this as their streets fill with homeless people and spent needles, and the crime rate soars. They're spitting on a $75 million gift to a hospital. But beneath all this, and beneath the animosity of the supervisors, is the growing problem of wealth inequality. Zuckerberg's gift probably seems more generous than it is, in fact. And for someone with $75 billion to cut a check for $75 million, that's like someone with $75 million cutting a check for $75,000. Or for someone with $75,000 to give $75 towards some cause. Okay, that is, it's no big deal at all. In fact, the richer you get, the more this proportion falls apart. Someone with a net worth of $75,000 is actually making more of a sacrifice by parting with $75, because that increment of money is still relevant to their budget. Once a person becomes fantastically wealthy, their personal spending, even on the most extravagant luxuries, represents a tiny portion of their net worth. So when you look at the details, this is not the sort of sacrifice one should be tempted to write newspaper articles about. Actually, looking at the Forbes list now reveals that Zuckerberg is currently worth $100 billion. He seems to have made $25 billion when I wasn't looking. Given how quickly Zuckerberg's wealth has grown, there were many days this year, probably most days this year, where his net worth increased by more than $75 million. The wealthiest people in our society make millions of dollars a day, every day, whether they work or not. Most people just don't have good intuitions about the magnitude of these differences in wealth. Okay, the richest people now make in a day what the most successful movie stars, Tom Cruise and Will Smith and Scarlett Johansson, make over the course of many years, or even a lifetime, at the absolute pinnacle of success in the movie industry. This is where we are in terms of wealth inequality. Again, I don't mean to demonize wealth at all. And it's worth noting that Zuckerberg and his wife have pledged to give 99% of their wealth away over the course of their lifetime. That's amazing, right? And that should be celebrated without any reservation whatsoever. That's the sort of thing people should write newspaper articles about. Assuming they actually do this, and they don't just park all the money in a charity after they die, they will be total heroes for living this way, whatever else you might think about them. So there's a complicated set of issues to think through here, politically and ethically. San Francisco is an extremely wealthy city, which has been ruinously mismanaged. And the rich appear to be leaving for perfectly rational reasons. This is a death spiral. And the quasi-socialist demonization of wealth, of the sort that one hears from people like AOC and Elizabeth Warren, is part of the problem. We just can't afford zero-sum thinking in a positive-sum game. And prosperity can be positive-sum. That's not to say there aren't trade-offs and inevitable inequality. But we need to find policies that lead us in a direction that benefits more or less everyone. And we need to incentivize people to really succeed, and then use their taxes and charity to help others. It seems to me that what we need to solve our problems is both competence and compassion. We have seen so little of either lately. And merely dunking on people on Twitter won't produce these things. Becoming a single-issue thinker won't produce these things. We have to recognize that we're living in an unhealthy ecology of ideas. It's become like a Superfund site of bad memes, and we have to clean it up.